Hello, I am a third-year anthropology student in the ICON program, and before I start, I'd really like to ask you to fill out feedback forms. I'm going to solicit feedback at the end of this, but if we don't have time, please make some comments. I would really love and appreciate your feedback. The social movement that I'm working with for my dissertation research is called the Nature Connection Movement, which, as this title might suggest, works with these ideas of embodied and emotional connections to nature, as contested as that term might be. I realize that it might be tough for you to hear nature over and over again. I understand that. What I'm going to do today is offer you some background on the research problem, talk about the site and the research questions, talk really briefly about the literature and the methods, and then talk about integrative conservation in the context of this project. And to give some of you who don't know me very well some information about why I'm interested in the Nature Connection movement, I'm going to show you where I did my undergraduate research. So this is at the Tracker School in New Jersey, which is a wilderness survival school. And I worked with these people for my undergraduate thesis in exploring how wilderness education intersects with the modern day environmental movement. Here you can see one of the instructors applying camouflage in one of the week-long programs that I went to for my undergraduate thesis work. And this is part of a program where you live in New Jersey in the Pine Barrens. You take all these different classes on wilderness survival. There's generally about 100 people per class. So we're talking thousands and thousands of people cycling through these classes. While I was there, I noticed a very broad discourse on the alienation of North Americans from their natural environments, and a lot of talk about the virtues of spending time outdoors. And this idea is echoed in academic and popular media about the extinction of experience. And you may not have heard it talked about like that. You might have heard about Last Child in the Woods and Richard Louv. So it's kind of that context. Basically, some people are migrating to urban areas. They're spending a lot more time indoors, and their experiences outside might be very perfunctory, such as the time that they spend going to and from their cars. As nature writer Robert Michael Pyle wrote, "People who care conserve. People who don't know don't care. What is the extinction of the condor to a child who has never seen a wren?" You can see that the expectation is that if people are not acquainted with nature, then they won't care to conserve it. And just to give you a caveat, I'm not demonizing watching television or playing video games, but the idea is that this is something that's replaced our experience in nature, and that's why I included these images. So to combat this extinction of experience, there's been a lot of research on fostering what people consider to be positive human-environment relationships, with the idea that humans can and do have positive relationships with nature. So we can see this in examples from traditional ecological knowledge, in which some human-environment relationships have been forged through long periods of time, have been quite sustainable. There's also this idea in contemporary education and environmental psychology literature that positive experiences in nature that are particularly facilitated by other people, especially for kids, can lead to emotional affinity with nature. And this is thought to be directly related to a willingness to engage in responsible environmental behavior. And a lot of this research has led environmental educators to call for educational programs that have more embodied and experiential components to them instead of just focusing solely on cognitive aspects. And when you think of embodiment, I want you to think of this idea of including the entirety of the body's experience, so emotions, mental capacities, and the physical experience in research design, and also just in the consideration of the experience of being human. There is a social movement that claims to foster positive human-environment relationships through embodied outdoor education programs, and it's called the Nature Connection Movement. This movement, through various organizations throughout North America and Western Europe, directs education programs for adult and children. Here you can see an adult program, and this is the director, and he's basically giving outdoor cooking demonstration without using any modern tools. So, for instance, we have an area here to smoke meat. This is the area, it's kind of a long trench filled with different fires for cooking dough, for cooking fish, stuff like that. So the point of the programs from different directors' perspectives is to get people in direct physical contact with nature, and through various activities get them to forge these emotional and cognitive and physical bonds with local nature. And these are supposed to help people develop different relationships with local landscapes and encourage them to act as conservationists. There's a lot of focus on family involvement too. So a lot of these programs will have both adult and child programs. And the idea is that if you can get families involved, then there'll be support for the program goals because you have both the parents and the children working on these goals together and also being able to understand their relationships with nature. So this is all from the program's expectations of what's going to happen. This was all really intriguing to me. So both my experience in an internship with Wild Intelligence, which I'll tell you about later on in February, I believe. If there's an internship brown bag, you can come to that. As well as the literature and my experiences, led me to find a nature connection program that really wanted a researcher to come. This was called Sticks and Stones program in Heathcote, Ontario. So this school is really similar to other nature connection programs. They all run off of a general model that's passed down through regional and national leadership, through apprenticeships, different gatherings that they have, literature, and videos. And so what's different about the programs is basically the format. You might have one area that has a lot of adult programs and only one for kids. Or you might have a program that's really heavily focused on children and they only have one adult program, but they all run off of this general idea that families should be doing this stuff together, and that's why they include both adults and children. So you can see here a really common practice in the nature connection movement. This girl has built herself a shelter out of materials that she found in her local landscape. So from the movement's perspective, not only is she in physical contact with nature, but perhaps she is developing this idea that nature can shelter her and take care of her by building a small house for herself. Sticks and Stones Wilderness School in Ontario has both child and adult programs. However, their child programs take place on a Chippewa First Nation reserve on Georgina Island in Lake Simcoe. So mentors from Sticks and Stones visit the island twice a week, and they administer their programs for the kids there. And just to give you a sense of where this is, here is Sticks and Stones in Heathcote, which is an area of rolling hills and agricultural land. And here is Georgina Island in Lake Simcoe. And just to give you an idea, there's Toronto. So they're both about 2 hours north and northwest of Toronto, respectively. This is a situation in which Chippewas, who considered nature connection programs to be part of their reclaiming of lost cultural heritage and reclaiming natural history that they've lost through time, are inviting Caucasian nature connection movement members in to teach their children about their lost cultural heritage. So that's one really interesting difference between this program and a lot of other nature connection programs, which are generally mostly middle-class Caucasian participants. And indeed, the Chippewas that I talked to last summer when I visited the island said, this is our indigenous program. This is helping us to be more indigenous people. So besides this idea of Caucasians teaching indigenous people about their lost natural heritage, what I don't necessarily understand in this situation is what it is that the Chippewas and the Nature Connection members think about human-landscape interactions. What do they think of the current state of those interactions? What do they want to change about them, if anything? And then how are people perceiving their landscapes and interacting with them? And using these program activities in their everyday lives. To give you a sense of the research site where I'll be living and doing field work for at least a year, if not more, hopefully. This is an aerial view of Georgina Island. So you can see here the way the road wraps around the island, and the interior part is full of forest, but it's second growth because it's all been logged. Right down here is the port. And there's a ferry that goes to the mainland. So about 200 people from the band live on the island, and about 400 people live in the mainland to the south of it, with a couple in Toronto, but most of them are based in this particular area. Here's a picture of the elementary school, where the kids from Georgina Island are, they come here for their elementary studies, and also this is where Sticks and Stones comes. So basically what happens is, from 1st through 6th grade, Chippewas from the island and the mainland are going to this elementary school, and from 7th grade on, children from the mainland and the island are on a mainland high school through the York Region District School Board. So looking at all this literature and all these experiences and talking with people from Sticks and Stones and from Georgina Island, this is the research question that I know needs work, but that I have right now. So what is the role of embodied outdoor education in the Nature Connection movement in contributing to human landscape interactions and perceptions among Chippewa members of the Georgina Island Band? And these are some of the kids who are in the Sticks and Stones program right now. So as we speak, possibly, there are mentors driving on the ice road that connects the mainland to the island to go administer these programs twice a week. The only time they don't visit is when the ice road is starting to melt, and people have definitely fallen in through the ice and traveling back and forth. So it's either the ferry, the ice, or nothing really. So here are the sub-questions for this project. And I'm really trying with these questions to start from the beginning and understand, what are the human landscape perceptions that people are taking on from the perspective of nature connection movement mentors, and from this perspective of the Chippewas who are inviting people in and participating in these projects. And what features of their local landscapes do the Chippewas focus on? Why do they prioritize them, and how do they interact with them? So I want to know what Chippewas of different generations and experiences pay attention to and interact with. And I'm drawing from a couple different theories in the formulation of these questions. So very briefly, education theories, such as situated learning in communities of practice. This posits that people who are learning any skill in any community and in any place are apprentices in what to pay attention to in landscapes. So whether that's food, plants, or anything. And they're apprentices of skilled practitioners during everyday interactions. I'm also looking at environmental education literature, which suggests that environmental education and experience outdoors can lead to environmental identities, which are significant predictors of pro-environmental behavior, and also sense of place literature. Which is a relationship formed by people giving culturally shared emotional meanings to a place that are the bases of an individual's or a group's understanding of the environment. And here you can see in this picture this idea of situated learning in communities of practice. So you'll have people on the periphery of a community, maybe they're young, maybe they've just joined, and through collaboration, interaction, and engaging, they become an expert or a master in the beliefs, the behavior of a culture. So people are acting as participants. I'm also drawing from ethnoecology literature. So first of all, from the idea within ethnoecology that cross-cultural interactions can alter people's perceptions and interactions with local environments. I'm also drawing on research in landscape ethnoecology, which focuses on cultural landscapes. So thinking of the interactions between bodies, cultural norms, temporal and spatial landscape forms and functions. And when I think about landscapes, and when it's used in landscape ethnoecology, it's generally drawn from landscape ecology. So the physiographic and biotic components of an area and their systematic three-dimensional spatial relationships. So from this point of view, living and non-living components are parts of landscapes. And along with that goes landscape mapping, which can be used to see people's concepts of landscapes and senses of place. And again, very briefly, here are the methods that I think I'll be using for this project. So participant observation, spending time with and interacting with, living with people, and observing their everyday activities in that community. Looking at archival video data that's been taken by Chippewa children and adults and by nature connection mentors. They have a lot of video that they're very willing to share for this project. And also interview and video data that I collect of human landscape interactions, and ethnoecological and geographic data on landscape features. And this is a girl in a nature connection program, and I've just put these pictures in to let you guys know what people are doing. Sometimes I feel like it's hard to describe what's happening in these programs, and I just want to show you. So she's being blindfolded so that she can use her other senses and be attuned to the feel, the smell of this flower. So this is another very common practice with the nature connection, to try to get people in touch with their senses. So I know that was a very brief overview, and I just wanted to get the stuff out there so that it makes sense in the context of this next slide. And it'll help you to understand what it is that I want to accomplish, particularly with this. What is iconic about this research project? This is what I've been struggling in formulating this project for the last couple of years, and what I would love your feedback about, and I tried really hard to leave a little time, so I'm not sure if that'll happen, but we can talk about this later and hopefully in the discussion section. Is this iconic because I'm using education theory and ethnoecology theory, literature, and methods together? Is it because there's the potential for strategic communication with the video ethnography that can possibly be produced from this? And also because in working with the community, I have to be able to communicate and present the results to the York Region District School Board, which is the school board that takes care of the high school that the Chippewa children are attending. And this is the school district that's also considering developing their own nature connection programs to serve the Chippewa youth in the high school so that it doesn't have to just stop in elementary school. Is it strategic communication because I also need to present the results to other Chippewa bands who are interested in developing these nature connection programs for their own schools, yet they're waiting for someone to produce any sort of research results so they understand what's going on. Is this iconic because it's being developed in collaboration with people who really want a researcher to come in and do work with them? And what does it mean for me at this point in my career to push disciplinary boundaries with my research? Is it something that I've been able to accomplish? Is there something more that needs to happen with this? So this is what I would really like feedback on, and that I hope we can talk about, and I'm being told to stop. So thank you so much for